We're back for the second installment of our little discussions with Heiko Bleher. This time we're going to talk about the discovery of Discus in the wild, how they were brought into the aquarium trade, and the pioneers who really made all those beautiful colors that we see every day now. And we import them from everywhere in the world: Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Europe, and Florida. And I would have to say, you can put it all in maybe 3 people. And one of them's Heiko Bleher, and he's going to talk about all those gentlemen who were involved in getting us that beautiful species into our hobby. I was looking at your shirt earlier, and I was surprised you would have some colored discus. There are wild red discus in the world.
Yes, I was very fortunate to find the very first red one. And this goes back to 1975. It's written on my shirt, and the shirts are limited number, which I have done. And you have the year when I found it. And the interesting story about this is I brought them back alive, just a few, I think 2 or 3. And my dear friend, Eduard Schmidt-Focke, the pioneer of modern discus breeding, he's in my volume 2, and he's in all my magazines. We lived practically door to door,
His name
30 years. Eduard Schmidt-Focke. Schmidt-Focke. He's the pioneer of discus, modern discus breeding. There was some breeding of discus in the early days before World War II. Nothing really came out of it. And then 54, 55 was really the break point where people started to breed discus, and he was the first one.
Ah, so this is even, I always thought Hans was...
No.
Okay.
Hans is much, much later.
Okay, all right.
This is decades later, or maybe half a century later.
Huh.
No, Eduard Schmidt-Focke was the pioneer, definitely the first one to really breed this amazing, majestic fish. This was... and you have it here on the cover of my book, no?
Yeah.
In the Alenquer. The red I found in the western Amazon region. As I said, Schmidt-Focke was the first one to have them, and he bred them. And all those red ones from the late 60s, 1970s, late 1970s, 80s, they all came from his breeding stock.
Was the breeding area in Germany?
Yes.
Okay.
I had my Aquarium Rio established in very close to the Frankfurt airport in 1967. From that day on, every month I was in South America collecting fish. And I always brought back new species. And for Schmidt-Focke, always discus. He was always after discus. That's why I have 2 big discus books. No? They go back to that time. The whole history is mentioned there in detail.
I love wild discus.
I have started to write this book after I'd done 330 expeditions into the Amazon. I thought I had a good idea about discus in nature, but because all the other books people write about discus because they traveled once or twice in their lifetime in the Amazon, and they thought they know it all.
I don't know how many red turquoise and blue turquoise discus we sell, though, versus the beautiful wild discus. I don't think people realize they're much more expensive. That is a problem, but they're so much more hardy. It's one of the few fish that the wild ones are hardier than the tank raised one.
First of all, you must understand that the tank raised discus, practically everyone, is grown up in a naked aquarium. Breeders do not keep them in the natural environment, while the wild ones are grown up in natural environment. So this alone already shows you that the wild is much more resistant than the tank-bred one. Because their immune system is 100 times more strong than of a tank-bred one's. The tank-bred one is reduced to his small 4 sides glass aquarium, and whatever grows in there on parasites and bacteria, he can naturally defend himself. And most of the time, if it's kept in good condition against it, But the other way around, it's impossible for wild fish to be adapted to all those parasites and bacteria the tank-bred ones have. This is something people never seem to realize. And then you have to also understand that wild discus come from completely different water parameters.
So if you want to keep discus, should you just keep them from one source? Because they carry different parasites, don't mix them up? Or?
That's why I always suggest never mix them, and not even tank-bred discus, because every breeder in my volume 2, I've interviewed 700 breeders of discus worldwide in every continent. And you cannot find 2 breeders between those 700 who agree on the same breeding system, on the same water parameters, on the same food, and etc. Not one. I suggest what my experience over all these years is what you do with wild and what with tank-bred discus.
Okay.
And one of the many experiences is never mix them. Never mix them. You have always the chance 50-50 that you're going to introduce diseases. They come from 2 different worlds. They have 2 different immune systems.
We have a practical problem now in the States because the number one food for discus here used to be live blackworms. But there's one supplier and he's slowly going out of business. It's become impossible to get live blackworms. What do they feed discus in Europe? What's a good successful? Do you have to get beef hearts and make your own discus food?
Dear Jack Watley, my late dear old friend, he came to Germany. He always loved Schmidt-Focke, and because we were very close, he always took the discus from him. And this was the time when I, unfortunately, invented beef hearts as food, because I came from the Amazon bringing back discus from Schmidt-Focke, ice cold winter. I always remember 1967, and there was no food. Schmidt-Focke was one of the
1967.
1967.
I don't think even Tetra Flakes were around then.
No.
That's before everything.
I'm sorry to say, but flake is not the right food for wild discus.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he from the beginning, Schmidt-Focke had his own cultivation of mosquito. He had his backyard. He was breeding mosquitoes, and he always had mosquito larvae. It's the best food for discus you can have. And then he also had white worms. He cultivated the white worms. He also did. You can cultivate yourself white worms at your home. Angitrea. It's so easy to do. All you need is oatmeal and a little bit of milk, and one startup colony, and you will have every day the best food you can have, for especially when the discus arrive from the wild and are so skinny, which I have seen here now. Yesterday,
around it.
I mean,
skinny discus.
I cannot believe
problem.
People sell such skinny discus. They naturally have to die sooner or later. The buyer will have problems.
Yeah,
I think this is really, for me, this is a crime to do that. You can practically not find this in Europe anymore. Everyone or cultivates his own live food, or goes in the backyard and collects Daphnia and Cyclops, because those you find everywhere around the globe. And you find them almost all year long. But you have to go out. You have to go out into nature, into a creek, into a lake, in a pond, and you will find it.
So someone please start a white worm colony business so we can keep these discus fat.
I think to do a business with white worm is very difficult, because it's not so easy. You have to cultivate masses, and the best way is to have peat moss. Put the oatmeal, the starting, the milk, and then put top glass on top. Every day will go to the glass, and you only have to scrape it off. But you see, to do quantity, you have to really do quantity of setup of boxes with this. Schmidt-Focke always had 20, 30 or 40 of such styrofoam boxes with peat moss and glass on top.
I've had a little success with frozen bloodworms, but not much. I thought they'd go for them the way they went for live blackworms, but no, I thought that would be the easy way out.
Well, if you do it from the beginning, I think they will always go for it.
Okay.
I have actually this experience. But then in Europe, and I don't know now in America, but in the past, I know you had mosquito larvae frozen, you had Mises frozen.
We do have plenty of those.
You have all of these things, and they will eat that.
Yeah, that's available in all the pet stores.
This is what you have to do.
So we have to thank not only Heiko Bleher, but the other people he mentioned, the Watleys, the Fockers, the Schmidts, the people responsible for bringing this beautiful fish to our trade. Now that we've learned some proper care and handling techniques for discus, I hope you all consider bringing one into your home. But first, set up that aquarium. Thank you very much. Oh, and subscribe. And have a great week.